Good morning. My name is Mr. Jennings. You can call me Mr. J for short. Today we're going to be talking about electrical theory, and these are some components that we're going to reference today. So, as an electrician, your primary job is to determine the scope of the work that you're getting ready to start and the components you're going to utilize. And a simple formula that we utilize is, there's two of them, pi, and it can be written out EIR, that's what we call or pi, PIE. And each one of these symbols represents a factor in an equation with any two elements that we utilize within this simple equation can find the results of the third. So as long as you have two out of the three, you can solve your answer for whatever dilemma it may be. A lot of times we'll have pieces of the equipment that will help us determine that. Some of the things that we have in consideration is constants. So what I mean by constants is something that is always inevitable and not going to change for the most part. Voltage is one of those things that does not change in both of these formulas. It's considered the electromotive force, or the push. Think of it like water. As water is ready, standby in your spigot, it's under a specific pressure from the utilities. So the utilities feed your house with water. You have your spigot outside, and the moment you open that spigot, a gush of water comes out at a specific pressure. So think of voltage as just that. It's ready, it's waiting, it's at your panel, it's served and provided from the electrical utility company at a specific amount or volume. And so that push is constant. And so within that, we use that in a formula as one of our base elements. Other factors that come into play that we would take is, say, for instance, our component. So if we're going to provide power to a toaster oven, let's say the toaster oven has, we're going to abbreviate, we'll call it a TO, toaster oven, has 10 ohms of resistance across its heating elements. So when you go pop your toast in the bread toaster there and you push down, you'll notice the glow on the heating elements there. They're bright red, and that's obviously what creates heat and toast your bread. And then at that point, you're like, oh, okay, cool. So, but it has a constant based upon the length of that element and how many elements. And of course, manufacturer designed it as such so it can be used at a constant temperature and be utilized with a specific voltage, 120 volts. So your result would be, if you use this formula, you can find out what your ampacity was. Now, again, excuse my handwriting, it's a little small. I'm trying to fit a lot of information on a small board, and this is just a video. But if we take the voltage divided by the resistance here at 10 ohms, 120 divided by 10 ohms of resistance, we get 12 amps. Now again, these are what we call units of measurement as well. So standard units of measurement in electricity is simply understood and identified by symbols, essentially, but they have terms and meanings towards them. So V is for voltage, which we kind of already talked about. We also utilize the E as a representation. And then you have I in this formula is intensity or current, and it is represented as A for the unit of measurement. That would be the end result we're looking for in the formula. It is also a byproduct of heat, or its byproduct that is going to produce this heat, hence the toaster oven is my prime example, because the heat that's created across those heating elements actually is a byproduct of pushing voltage across that resistive element, and that resistive element and the push that's constant actually creates a byproduct of heat, and that heat is measured as a unit of measurement in ampacity. And hence we come up with these answers. And the way we write our answers out is just in fact that. It would be 12 amps based upon the formula itself. And then we have ohms. Ohms, is, as I described, is resistance, or ohms, and it's what we have to travel through. So that heating elements themselves and the toaster oven is specifically what we're traveling through. It's a gradient. It's a kind of, think of it as like you're trying to run through a maze. If that maze was straight, you can travel really fast. If the maze is jagged, it's going to slow you down, and it's going to take you a little bit harder to get through there and push your way through. Or you think of a crowd of people. If you're running through a crowd of people and they don't get out of your way and you have to push through, you have an intensity that you're running through. That's your force, your push. You're pushing through that crowd, but that crowd is, if they're not aware of you, are going to be sitting still. Well, you're going to put force into pushing through them. They are essentially, they are like a resistance towards you. And of course, you're going to have to put off more power, and therefore the byproduct is essentially heat, via you burning calories trying to get through that crowd. That's just a prime example. Then we have pi. Pi is just that. We have P stands for power, or watts. This would be a unit of measurement that you would actually see utilized for your water heater. So your water heater is measured across the heating element itself. Inside you have two of them in your water heater. Each water heater is comprised of a specific wattage of element and resistance that the voltage has to push through. So, and it's also comprised of, based upon a value that it's saying, hey, that heating element is 4,500 watts. So we could, in fact, utilize the value of the 4,500, and we can divide it by, in this case, we're dealing with 240 volts if we were dealing with this type of water heater. And it would actually give us 18.75 amps. And I just know that off the top of my head. And there's other steps that would come into play when we're dealing with constants. If something's considered continuous duty, if it's running for over 3 hours. And so we have multipliers that we take in consideration when we're dealing with continuous duty. So we would multiply that times 125%, which gives us a value roughly about 25 amps. And we have standard size breakers that follow suit that we would utilize in regards to sizing and determining what size breaker we need in the panel to provide enough power for the circuitry involved for that water heater per se. These are just highlights of Ohm's law and what we will be touching more on throughout the rest of the week. Please take extensive notes. If you have any further questions, you're more than welcome to come approach me and we can talk further about it. I'll be glad to explain more on the board. The details will be comprised in the book for you. You obviously will be expected to have practice questions, and you'll see a lot of these, and we will be going over them. I'll pick and choose a few, but a lot of the book work is comprised upon you putting in effort in order to learn. The more you practice, the better you get at it, and the better you will become understanding what it is you're dealing with. And a lot of it's just repetitious. You plug and play different figures and you will find different results. And everything is different depending on what you're actually utilizing. Motors and such, we're probably going to get too much into that as we deal with residential. Sometimes we do pool pumps, such. A lot of it is nameplates that we have to size according to, and some of the values that are on nameplates of equipment that we would find, we're going to utilize that nameplate to size and determine our circuit for that specific piece of equipment. That's part of our job as electricians. Our job is to take the piece of equipment and design a circuitry for that specific piece of equipment for the customer. So hopefully this gave you a good taste of what we are going to be doing as electricians and what your daily job will be. Again, thank you for watching, and you have a great evening.